Then we'll go on to our Chief Program and Impact Officer, Dolores Ramirez, who will do a little bit of a deeper dive into what Connecting Community is at Growing Home. And then we will end with Herminia Batista, who will give a little bit of an understanding of what the Connecting Community program looks like from the participant level. So we will go ahead. Oh yeah, and also to let everyone know, at this point we will be recording. So you will probably get a notification that will let you know that we're going to be recording this. And so just wanted to make sure that everyone is aware of that. And with that, we will go ahead and turn it over to Karen so that she can start the presentation.
Great. Good afternoon, everybody. As Miranda said, I'm Karen Fox-Elwell, the President and CEO at Growing Home, and it's so wonderful to see so many of you joining us today to learn more about our Connecting Community work. So as many of you on the call know, our mission here at Growing Home is to guide children and their families on a path to a brighter future. And our vision as an organization is that our entire community is working together to ensure that children and their families have a place to call home, food on the table, and opportunities to pursue their dreams. One of the things that's so unique and wonderful about Growing Home, and I think is so well articulated within that vision statement that I just shared with you all, is really this dual focus that we have here at Growing Home, both to focus on sustainable improvements and outcomes for families, while also looking at improvements in the community as a whole. And so recently at Growing Home, we've been focusing a lot and really clarifying our impact strategy as an organization and the sustainable improvements and sustainable outcomes that we're working towards within the community. And so the basis of our impact strategy, kind of the first step in that strategy, is providing and connecting families with basic need supports within the areas of food access and housing access, so that families are in a place of stability that really puts them into a growth mindset to be able to move forward on two distinct yet interconnected pathways. And so those two pathways you see here in front of you of our pathway for strong and resilient families and our pathway for thriving and equitable communities. Our strong and resilient families pathway is really about parents gaining the skills, the tools, and the coaching so that they can advance their own growth as well as the growth and development of their children. The Thriving and Equitable Communities pathway is similarly about providing skills, tools, and coaching with a focus on improvements in the community overall as we work towards that goal of thriving and equitable communities. Our first two Porch-Side chats that have focused on nurturing children and strengthening families have been more about that family pathway. And today we're really going to focus on that community pathway as we talk about our Connecting Community programs. So next slide. So you may be wondering, what are our Connecting Community programs? Obviously it piqued your interest to come and join us today. And so I know some of you are familiar with them and some might be hearing about them for the first time. So for us at Growing Home, Connecting Community is about tapping into the leadership and the resiliency of the families that we work with in our different programs and really partnering with them for community level change. Recognizing that we need to bring a cross-section of our community, the families we're working with in our programs, our volunteers, and our community at large to all share in the responsibility of solving community challenges connected to Growing Home's mission. And so our work is really about connecting families in our programs to each other and connecting them to the community at large, all in an effort to work forward on collective action. And so we have three primary activities within this work. We have our community organizing work, our mission-focused advocacy, and our volunteerism. Within our community organizing work, we utilize an asset-based community development framework, whereby we're tapping into and learning about the skills, the talents, and the assets that our community members bring, and the skills that they have and want to contribute in making improvements in their community. As we're getting to know folks in the community, we're then also hearing what are their passions, what are the areas that they want to see improvements in their community, and bringing folks together that have common areas of interest to go forward on different projects for community action. This work is then paired with our mission-focused advocacy work, whereby we're working to amplify the voices of our community members as well as our organizational voice to really address some of the root causes of the issues connected to Growing Home's work. Issues like food justice, issues of homelessness and housing justice, and issues of educational equity. And working in this work is really working then to create systems level and policy level change to really eradicate some of those inequities happening in our community. The third component of our connecting community is our volunteerism. And so it's about both providing opportunities for participants in our different programs to volunteer and give back to their own community, while also partnering alongside the other volunteers in our community to really think about how they can have a meaningful role in moving the mission forward and in moving their community forward. And Growing Home is in an effort and working towards becoming an organization where we're by the community and for the community. And a lot of this work really taps into our connecting community work. So as I said early on in the introduction, this is kind of a unique aspect to the work that we do as an organization and really distinguishes us from a lot of our peers doing similar work. And so it's taken us a little bit of time. This transformation as an organization hasn't happened overnight. And so I'm going to pass it on to Dolores to talk with us a little bit about the journey we've been on over the past few years in this work.
Great. Thank you so much, Karen. I appreciate that. Yeah, so as Karen mentioned, I am going to take you on a journey around what community organizing and advocacy has looked like for Growing Home. We have been doing or engaging in this work for about 6 years now. So we started in 2014 and 2015 after 16 years of being a traditional direct service provider. We recognized the opportunity to better tap into the leadership and the resiliency of the families with whom we're working, to partner with them and bring forth community level change. We did this by way of a community survey where we had an opportunity to go around and around our community and really ask our participants different questions. And one of the things that was really interesting in learning was that members of our community felt that they either rarely or never had a say in what's happening in their community, and that they wanted a greater opportunity to be more involved in making change or being involved in general. So at that point was when Growing Home decided to hire our first community organizer. So within the first year, in moving on to 2016 and 2017, the focus really began to, first of all, establish relationships and trust. Building relationships with the community organizer and Growing Home participants was one of the key components, because we know that in order for us to be successful in this work, we have to have genuine and authentic relationships with our communities to really be able to start gathering the interest of active leaders and identifying those natural emerging leaders. We were able to do this work by starting one-on-one conversations with our participants to identify issues of common interest. As we were building relationships and building solidarity, we began asking groups of community members, what is it that they were interested in working on, what's going on in their communities, and really tapping into what are their passions and what are they passionate enough to act on. And so through this work, we really were able to identify that at that time, advocating for better renters protection rights and the opportunity to testify at state legislature. So at that time, a lot of the work was really focused around an affordability of housing. And so that's where a lot of energy started being poured into. That year, we were also able to start our community garden with members in our community. So as we moved on and as we continued to engage in this work and continue to engage with the community, moving on to in 2018 and 2019, we really recognized that we needed a better way to integrate our community organizing work with the work that's already been going on at Growing Home for many stakeholders, both inside of the organization and outside of the organization. There seemed to be a misunderstanding or a lack of clarity between what was Growing Home doing in community organizing and how does that relate to the work and the programs that are already going on. And so in efforts to try to bring more clarity and to try to engage and create a stronger framework, we started off by conducting a listening campaign. By way of this listening campaign, we worked with Growing Home's direct service staff, and they helped us identify participants throughout the organization's programs who would be good candidates for participating in the campaign, and really tapping into kind of those natural leaders within each one of our programs. By doing this listening campaign, we learned that many of our program participants wanted to be engaged in more than just the program that they were participating in, that they wanted us to know that they had different skills, different passions, different talents, and that they were ready and willing to share them with the Growing Home. However, that they also didn't really know how to do this. And so with this information in hand, Growing Home began to refine its organizing model to more fully reflect an asset-based community development and a network organizing framework, which is essentially the frameworks that we are currently using at Growing Home. One of the things that I really appreciate about the framework that Growing Home uses, this framework of asset-based community development, is that it taps into the gifts and the passions and the talents of community members. It comes at this approach from a very strength-based, recognizing that we are all human beings and we all have so much to give and so much to offer. And regardless of where you're at in your moment and point in life, we can all work together to strengthen our community. And that really has been one of the key components that has been that influences the work that we do. And it also pairs really well with Growing Home's approach to becoming a participant-centered organization, where we recognize that we are an organization that is here with our community and by our community. And so coupling those concepts and that work really makes for a great opportunity to become an organization that is centered and rooted in our community needs. So with that, as that trajectory has continued to evolve, and as we continue to refine our framework, we developed a ladder of engagement, which I'm going to talk about in greater detail. And basically, what our ladder of engagement is a tool that we use in the framework that really lays out the pathway for program participation to leadership within each individual program, and to mission-related community-driven projects, and then to having leadership seats at the table, in whether that is within Growing Home or outside of Growing Home. Basically, the ladder of engagement is almost an opportunity to track the trajectory of participants. In a very common example of how this ladder of engagement can be seen in action is, for instance, in situations where community members come to Growing Home, and maybe at first they're only participating in our food pantry, or they're only participating in our Parents as Teachers program. And as they become more involved in our organization, as they as they have the opportunity to learn more, they then become more involved in different projects, whether it be volunteering. And then through volunteering, maybe they find out that they want to become more engaged in a community-driven project that is mission focused. And as they develop their relationships with Growing Home participants, with staff, with other community members, they continue to strengthen their leadership skills. They continue to strengthen their own voice. Naturally, there become more windows and opportunities that open up for them to increase participation. And then at some point, they either participate in our program advisory committee. They also have an opportunity to participate in our advocacy committee, and ultimately the goal would be even to have them become members of our board of directors. And so that's just kind of a little example of how this ladder of engagement really aims to both couple our service provision with the advocacy and community organizing work that we are aiming to carry out. So I'd like to share a little bit of some of the successful projects that we have been able to carry out throughout this time. One of the projects that was very exciting and successful for us was our opportunity to advocate for an affordable housing project here in Westminster, where there are going to be 220 units of affordable housing built off of near 100th and Federal, for those of you that are near or local to the area. We had an opportunity to advocate for this project to take place and truly be able to fight that NIMBYism, that not in my backyard voices that we're also fighting against the opportunity to have affordable housing. We were also able to establish a community garden this year at the Irvin Street Library by working with the City of Westminster and with our community leaders. It's a wonderful harvest that now is producing fruits, and a lot of those fruits you'll be able to find in our food pantry, because a lot of that produce gets distributed to our food pantry. We were also able to participate in an advocacy boot camp with a partner organization that culminated with a day at the Capitol to speak to elected officials about food justice issues. And finally, we were able to carry out a public charge workshop where community members themselves organized an event to better understand about, or better learn and understand what public charge entails and how that might be impacting themselves or their families or their friends and their neighbors. They were also able to work with attorneys to have an opportunity to ask questions and receive some guidance. And so this was also a great event where we had community action, community leadership in action and thriving. So with that, although we've been very, very active, obviously we had this public health crisis that hit and has definitely impacted all of the work that we have done. But nonetheless, it has been a great learning experience, and it has called for us, Growing Home in general, but also community organizing to be innovative and to pivot and to be able to continue the work. First of all, when the pandemic started, everything momentarily came to a bit of a halt, because obviously we were not able to carry out our meetings, and so much of the, as you can imagine, so much of the community organizing work is done in person. So much is about relationships and being with your friends, with your neighbors. But we had an opportunity to really just start doing virtual meetings, and our community members and those who are engaged in this work were very quick to learn the technology, and so we moved all of our meetings to a virtual mode. And so Zoom is the name of the game right now. The other component was our community garden. The community garden gave us a true opportunity to continue to have those human connections in a way that is safe with social distancing, but still be able to tend to our gardens and to be able to connect and see people. We have also had an opportunity to tap into the gifts and to tap into what the offerings of community members by really having the opportunity to work in the food pantry. So we've had a lot of community members from all over continue to support the food pantry during this crucial time where we've had such a high demand for food in our community. And so we've had engagement in that way as well. We've also started engaging in different initiatives. We've had a recent partnership with Hunger Free Colorado to help share the work that is going on as it relates to the PEBT, which are federal food programs, and WIC in particular. So we've had an opportunity to carry out and expand elevate the voice of those programs and those resources that are available for our community. And that's been driven by community members. And then finally, through our advocacy efforts, we've had an opportunity to sign on to letters which impact our work, everything from the eviction moratorium to food access and federal relief funds. So that's just a little bit of the work that we have been able to carry out. And to share a little bit more of a personal perspective, we have invited our program advisory member, Herminia Bautista, and who I will now have her speak and share her story. So thank you so much for listening to this trajectory of where we're at. And I will pass it over to Herminia. Herminia, gracias por acompañarnos. Adelante.
Herminia, thank you for being here with us. Go ahead. Good afternoon. My name is Herminia. And well, I'm currently a member of the committee here at the Guidance or Advisory Committee here at Growing Home. I'm also helping with the community garden, but well, I would like to talk a little bit more about how I got to Growing Home more than anything, and share a little bit about what has happened with Growing Home. Well, I came to Growing Home because Sara Diaz and Lorena Osorio, that are part of the community group, they invited me. They invited me to be a part of the garden, or just a garden. They were organizing classes about gardening, as to how to prepare our own garden at home, and how to prepare compost with all the leftovers that end up in your home. And it really caught my attention that they told me that they had, they really wanted to have a community garden. And, especially for folks who don't have space at their home to have their own garden. And I ended up attending the classes that they were offering. And I was really thinking that I probably wasn't going to like it. And I was really surprised because the class was actually very interesting. We took that class, and I'm talking about 3 years ago that we took that class. I continued to go to the classes, and afterwards, I learned that Growing Home had a food pantry. And that's where I asked if my daughter was able to help. She was 13 years old at that time, and they said, sure. She was totally welcome and was able to be a volunteer. But it also caught my attention that I would, I said, oh, well, I would also like to be a volunteer. And they said, yes, of course. We need volunteers who are able to speak Spanish. And I registered myself. I filled out an application, and I began volunteering. And honestly, I felt really proud of being a volunteer at the food pantry, because it's something that the food bank or food pantry is such a great support for families who need it, right? Families who are not able to purchase their own food, and especially during the situation that we're living in right now. On top of that, I started to continue involving myself with different groups like Protégete, which is a fight for climate justice, with Live Well as well. And right now we're working with Hunger Free, and Live Well gave me the opportunity to get to know the capital. I had never been to the capital. I've lived in Colorado for 16 years, and honestly, I didn't know the capital. I had never been there. Growing Home took us to the capital. We got to see how laws or how bills are created, how laws are passed, and I'm really happy that I got that opportunity. Right now, we're working with, or we're promoting, our PBT programs. We're talking about WIC. We're promoting, school lunch, which is, it's really important for families to apply for free or reduced lunch at the schools. And with our garden as well. Right now, we're at the Irving Library, and we're really happy. We're really happy because it's giving us a lot of fruit. A lot of fruits. We have a lot of vegetables, and above all, it's organic. Because we don't use fertilizer, and it's one of the things that really fills me with pride. It fills me with pride because we've been able to have such a great garden, and this year, that's been even stronger. We're very united. We've had the garden for 3 years, and honestly, this is the first year that we've been united so much. And currently, I'm also a part of the advisory committee with Growing Home. And with the community garden, I'm the group's secretary, so I'm helping with several things within the group. I'm making sure that I keep track of how much we're harvesting. We're weighing everything that we harvest, and very soon I'm going to go ahead and add it all up to see how many pounds worth of fruits and vegetables we have so far. I think that'll be all on my behalf, and so now I'm going to go ahead and pass it on to the development staff.
Thank you, Herminia. We appreciate you sharing your story with us today. And it was so inspiring to hear about all of the wonderful produce that is coming out of the community garden. I have heard so many stories about the community garden, and hearing firsthand from you what this is looking like has given me just so much better perspective on what this group is bringing to the community and back to Growing Home and back to our food pantry. So we appreciate you sharing your experience, as well as telling us a little more about the advocacy work that you all have been taking part in. And now we want to turn it over. Oh, sorry. We're going to go quickly through the ways that you can all get involved, and then we'll turn it over to questions. As always, we want to make an opportunity for everyone to be a part of Growing Home, and so that's a huge part of the connecting community component is that we all are giving back to our community in some way, shape, or form. So some of the ways that you can get involved and give back right now, currently. We are always in need of diapers, especially the size 5 and 6. We are going through tens of thousands of diapers, especially in this pandemic time. There is a much greater need for diapers. So if that's something that you either can help form a drive for, or if you are able to give of those items, those are things that we currently need. We also are in great need of protein in our food pantry. That's something that has become a little more challenging for us to access. So things like canned tuna, canned chicken. It's always beneficial for us to have those canned veggies, especially as fruits and vegetables are becoming a little more scarce as the winter months are coming. So those are all things that you can donate to for as an in-kind contribution. And if you do have things that you want to drop off, you can do that right now at the Mac Recreation Center, which is just 2 blocks east of Growing Home before you get to Sheridan. And the hours that you can do that are Monday through Friday from 10:30 to 2. You can also check our growinghome.org/needed items page to get more information on our most up-to-date needs in the food pantry. The other way that you can support us, go to the next slide, Iris, is through your time, through volunteering. Now more than ever, we need as many volunteers as we can get. We are in the works of figuring out what comes next for Growing Home. And with that, we can absolutely use some more support in our drive-through food pantry right now. We have had a drop-off of volunteers recently with the start of school and various different things that are going on. It has definitely been a little more challenging to secure the number of volunteers that we need every day. In terms of our food rescue volunteer program, that also is something that we could use some help with. We currently have 23 stores that we are collecting food from each day, and that is also becoming a challenge for us. So again, any time that you have, we do have opportunities that allow for social distancing and allow for extra caution if it is needed, but also we take a lot of precaution to ensure that no one is unnecessarily exposed. To get more information about those opportunities, you can visit our website, growinghome.org/volunteer. Specifically for the drive-through food pantry, the need that we have is between the hours of 8:30 and 1:30, Monday through Saturday. So if you would like to sign up for that, you can go to that website, or if you know someone who you can wrangle into volunteering, you can also share that information with them. And then finally, we of course always appreciate support in the way of a monetary contribution. We have some great opportunities coming up. Currently, we have our Response to Recovery campaign, and you can contribute to that either through a one-time donation that actually is matched up to $2,500. You could become a monthly donor. You could set up a contribution each month. Just think of something, even as simple as $25 each month, which is maybe 5 cups of coffee if you're going to Starbucks these days. And you can set that up and then forget about it. You don't have to worry about it. And then that helps support Growing Home and our efforts into ensuring that folks are going from that initial response to COVID to that recovery side. You can also set up a fundraising page. We have these wonderful pages where you can set up your page, send it out to your friends and family, and ask them if they want to contribute to Growing Home. It's a great way to get some information out to your supporters and your network as well. So if you want to learn more about that, you can go to growinghome.org from-response-to-recovery. 4 dashes in that one. And then the final piece, we will have our Strengthen, Nurture, Connect virtual benefit coming up on October 14th. The invitation for those will be going out this next week. So put that on your calendar. It will be a virtual, more or less breakfast or evening event in which we will share more about Growing Home. We'll have a lovely video to share more about our mission. And then we will also be doing some fundraising activities through all of that. So save the date and make sure to share that with any and all in your network as well. So with that is all for our presentation. So we want to turn it over to questions. If you have a question, you can either put it directly into the chat box and I will go ahead and ask it. You can also just kind of wave your hand and I will call on you and you can unmute yourself. We do have a couple of questions that have come through the chat box already. So if you want to take a moment to write any other questions that you have, I'll go ahead. We can start with those. So the first question was around, and maybe Herminia, if you are comfortable answering this question is about our garden. So it is specific to if the weather, has the recent weather had a big impact on the community garden and the harvest? So Herminia, if you are able to unmute yourself and share with us the answer to that question, we would appreciate it.
Sí, la verdad, todo el grupo estábamos.
Yes, honestly, the entire group was really worried about the harvest. We had to go on Monday afternoon to make sure we cover everything. We covered all of the plants with plastic and whatever else we could cover them with to protect the plants from the snow. And you know, we went again, and it seems like everything was great. The plants weren't harmed too much. The temperature didn't drop too low, so it seems that everything is fine.
Wonderful, thank you, Herminia. So this is another garden question. So maybe Herminia, this will be a good one for you. The question comes from Shakira. Do you sell the produce from the garden?
No, nosotros no vendemos nada.
No, we do not sell anything. Everything that comes from the garden, whether, you know, the members who are a part of the garden group, they can take some, and, you know, what isn't taken by them, we make sure we give it to the pantry at Growing Home.
Wonderful, thank you. Herminia, people are very, very interested in the garden. So we have another garden question. So you're on the hot seat right now. So the next question is, what crops did you grow? I was interested in that one too. You had mentioned there was fruit, but also vegetables as well.
Tuvimos muchos vegetales, sembramos pepinos,
yeah,
cilantro.
We had a lot of vegetables. We had cucumbers, cilantro, chili, broccoli, onions, tomatoes, or the little like green tomatoes, corn, ejotes. I don't know, there were more. Right now I don't remember the entire list, but we did plant several vegetables. More than anything, it was vegetables. You know, we just planted apple cucumbers for ourselves, which is a little bit different. We didn't know about those before, so we planted those this year, but that's what we have new in our garden this year.
Wonderful, thank you, Herminia. It sounds like a delicious harvest. Let's see. Oh, this is a fun one. Herminia, it's another one about the crops. Do you have any favorite family recipes using the garden crops that you grew?
Sí, las calabazas que sembramos, obviamente la planta da flores. Entonces,
yes, the pumpkin that we planted, obviously, you know, they have flowers, so we have you know, I make pumpkin flowers, so I think that would be the family recipe that I have.
That sounds delicious, and I think I know what you're talking about, and that's one of my favorites too, because sometimes you don't want all of those flowers to actually grow into vegetables, and so you take the flowers and then you use the flowers too so that they can have a purpose. Any additional questions that folks have? Remember, you can either wave and ask it, or you can stick something in the chat box if you'd like. So we have another question. How did it become that the community was able to have the garden at the library? Dolores, do you want to take that question?
Sure, I can get us started on that. So this was really an interesting and very collaborative effort. So as most of you know, Unfortunately, I want to say last year already, Growing Home faced a really very difficult decision to sunset our Canopy program, which we had a large host in congregation that was providing space off of in a congregation nearby Growing Home. It's about a quarter mile from Growing Home, and in that space, in that space, we were able to have a garden, or the community really had a little piece of land, and that's where they started harvesting, or they started their garden. So when community members learned about us closing the program, there became concerns about the use of that space. And so what happened was they had a meeting. They had a community meeting where the city of Westminster was present, and actually the mayor was at that meeting as well. And one of our community members spoke up and shared the concern about the concern about what was going to happen to the garden, and really advocated and wondered if there was a way in which the city of Westminster would be able to support community members in continuing this work, as it creates greater food equity, as it creates opportunities for community engagement, for participation. And so through community members advocating and speaking up for their needs, began a process for Growing Home and the city of Westminster and our community members to figure out a way in which we could create a garden right here near us. And so Growing Home entered into a partnership with the city of Westminster, where through some back and forth negotiations, we were able to pick a site, which is the garden. It's about a quarter acre size, and the garden is located at the Irving Street Library. So that's how it all began. That's a great question. Thanks for asking.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dolores. We have one more question. It looks like we have time for that. So maybe either Karen or Dolores, this would be a good one for you ladies to answer. So how do you envision the Connecting Community program changing and evolving going forward?
Yeah, I can get us started, and then Dolores, feel free to jump in with any other thoughts. I mean, I think one thing we've heard throughout the past 6 months more is just talking about how COVID is really elevating, I think, a lot of the inequities that were already happening and occurring in our communities, and have brought up a lot of those inequities more to the surface and a more part of the conversations. I think of what does the road to recovery look like post-COVID. And so I really see our Connecting Community work continuing to have a really large role to play in conversations of how do we have an equitable and just recovery from COVID that really takes some of these inequities that we've been seeing in our community that were happening prior to COVID that have now been highlighted even more so. And how do we bring community members with lived experience to the table to really help us in thinking about how do we do things a little bit differently, and how do we have some solutions that really truly get to some of the root causes. So I think for the most part, I think just continuing to deepen and continue on the journey that we are on, and that Dolores did such a great job of laying out, and continuing to elevate and amplify the leadership of our community members, and to help support them to get engaged in a wide variety of ways in the community, in ways to tap into their passions, to tap into true community change. And so continuing on that journey in the ways that the different community members are most interested.
Thank you, Karen. Is there anything else, Dolores, you would like to add to that, or are you okay? Wonderful. It looks like that muted myself. It looks like that's the end of our questions As always, we're so appreciative to have all of your support, as well as your contributions to our connecting community work, and in terms of the volunteering and the ways in which all of you get involved as well. Make sure to save the date for October 14th. That will be our next opportunity to come together, and also for you to learn even more about the wonderful work that our community is contributing to through Growing Home. We appreciate your support. We will be, as always, sending this Porch-Side chat out via video afterwards. So if you have folks that you want to share it with, feel free to forward it on to them. But as always, thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing you the next time.